Hello, and welcome to Divorce Talk. I'm Lori McShane, a certified divorce specialist, and today we'll be tackling one of the most important aspects of navigating a divorce: legal clarity and understanding your rights. Going through a divorce can feel daunting, especially when it comes to legal aspects, but having a clear understanding of your rights and responsibilities can make the process a lot less overwhelming. And today, I am joined by our incredible panel of experts. We have Donald Schweitzer, Managing Partner and Certified Family Law Specialist from Schweitzer Law Partners, and Stephen Unruh, a licensed marriage and family therapist and divorce mediator. And joining us as well is Holly Freeling, a licensed marriage and family therapist and certified EMDR therapist. Together, we'll break down some of the key legal issues people face during a divorce and help guide you on how to navigate this complex process. So let's get started. So I would love to start this episode off with you, Dawn. Let's talk about what the key legal steps are that someone should be prepared for when they decide to file for that divorce.
Yeah, Lori, I love the topic because one of the things that I see is that people have to know where they're at any given time in a divorce. Divorce is a very complicated matter to the extent that the procedure is different than any other type of lawsuit. And yes, we have to think of it as a lawsuit. There's a distinct beginning and a distinct end, and there's a lot that goes on in between that people are not aware of. And if we could help people understand the journey that they're going to go through, the possible routes that they could take to get to the end, and let them know where they're at any given point in time, that's very, very helpful because it's very frustrating for people not to know this. So a divorce starts off with what we call automatic temporary restraining orders. And people should know that there are fiduciary duties related to the restraining orders that prevent people from engaging in certain types of behavior. So the first lesson that we try to teach people is abide by the restraining orders, because if you stay clear of any problems, your journey to the finish line is going to be a lot easier. So what is that journey? Well, we start with a summons and petition. There's a response within 30 days. And then both parties have to prepare what we call preliminary declarations of disclosures. And the reason why the law requires that is because of that fiduciary duty. The law wants people to be open, transparent, and not hide anything. And the law makes people disclose everything, whether it's your separate property or community property. Even if you know about it, you know that the other person knows about it, you have to exchange that. After that is done, and that has to be done within 60 days, then there's a process of discovery. And discovery can be as simple as issuing a couple of subpoenas. It could be taking a deposition or propounding discovery on the other party to make them produce documents. But we do that because a case is not ripe for settlement until the discovery is done. You have to work it up. And then here's the nice thing that we know is that 95% of all divorces end up in settlement, and Steve could talk about that, right? So that's a good thing. People think that every case is, fought and it's contested, but only 5%. And really, the only time that people should go to trial is when somebody's not acting reasonable, and that shouldn't be any of our clients, right? Okay.
Yes.
So that's the process. You got a beginning, summons petition. You have the declarations of disclosures, and then you have discovery. And it's somewhere along the line after you've completed that. Then hopefully somebody reaches out to the other side and says, let's settle the case. Let's try it at least. And then you start this process. And there's many ways to settle a case, and we can talk about that later. But ultimately what you want to do is steer it towards a reasonable solution. And what I tell people is that there's no perfect divorce, just like there's no perfect marriage. And you're going to have to make some concessions, right? People have to make concessions in order to settle. And we need to communicate that with our clients, right from the beginning, because a lot of people want to take unreasonable positions. They want you to do magic, or they read something, or they saw something on the internet, or a friend told them that they have the absolute right to do something, and it's contrary to the law. So, being reasonable and being willing to make concessions is key to getting through that process.
And Steve, how does mediation fit into these legal steps, and what should couples know about it?
Great question. Mediation is very powerful, but it doesn't mean that you have to have an amicable divorce. I work with high conflict divorce, and so you can have situations where people are really at each other and they're not getting along. But I think what you've talked about, Don, is there has to be at the very beginning this financial discovery. So in the mediation process, what I do is I sit down and I ask my clients, what is the most urgent issue? Is it housing, where I'm going to live? Is it the parenting plan? Who has the kids? Who's going to take care of the kids? Or is it, support? I need to know what's happening financially and who's going to take care of us. So that's why the financial discovery is so crucial. We have to look at people's incomes. But even in a highly conflicted situation, if people can if they can come together, and if we can find some reasonability where they're able to examine their expectations, we can mediate. But I think when people are very unrealistic, when they've been given bad advice, it could make mediation very difficult. You have to give up something in order to gain something. So if you really want your freedom, you have to be willing to negotiate.
Yeah, and not everybody's in the mental state to do that at the beginning. We all hope that folks could come together and settle the cases, but sometimes people need some help. And that's why, I think it's a great idea really early on that people see a counselor, they see a therapist. And Holly, when you're at those early stages, somebody's just coping with the fact that they're going through a divorce, how do you work with them?
Yeah. Well, a lot of times it's shock. They're in shock. Even if you're the breaker, even if you see it coming, a lot of times it doesn't feel like you think it's going to feel. And all those feelings can make you feel a little irrationally because it is the death of a dream.
Yeah.
We know it's hard to keep a marriage together, or a lot of them end in divorce, but we always think that we're going to be the exception. So there's that death of a dream that, you have to cope with. And a lot of times that leads to anger and being irrational. So you have to really get yourself together and try to get through it in the most peaceful way you can. Otherwise you're just going to be stuck in court, or you're going to be stuck in all these negotiations for so long.
Yeah, and Steve, you're talking about doing these mediations with high conflict cases.
Yeah.
And let's face it, if there weren't a lot of high conflict cases, we probably wouldn't be employed, right? I mean, if everybody just simply got divorced, there's no emotions in it.
Right.
But when you take on these people, do you put them in the same room? Do you separate them? What's your strategy with regard to that?
That's a great question. I do have clients that I believe have either some borderline characteristics, some narcissistic characteristics, sometimes hysterical reactions. And a part of that work is being able to limit what happens in the room. So I don't allow any bullying, I don't allow any intimidation. And in an extreme situation, when someone really can't contain themselves, they're out of control, and they're not listening to my advice, my education, and working with them, I've had to end mediation in the same room. And I've had to say, we are not going to meet together. We're going to meet on separate days. Now that's kind of an unusual situation, but we've been able to mediate, but they've had to come at different times. It takes longer, but I don't allow intimidation and bullying to occur, and I have to put an end to that in the room when it happens, and maybe even end the session right there.
Yeah, for my clients, what I like to do is just insist that we're in separate rooms right from the beginning, because what I see is that personalities get involved.
Yeah.
Even the attorney's personalities, because you want to put on a show for your client or whatnot, and it's like, come on. And that way, the mediator could be the person that is going from one side to the other and then keeping the peace and getting the work done.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yes.
So understanding your rights and responsibilities during a divorce can be confusing. So Don, what should people know how to protect themselves moving forward?
Yeah, I've done a lot of talking about your responsibilities, complying with the restraining orders that are automatic temporary restraining orders and your fiduciary duty. But what about your rights? Well, family court is like every other court in America. You have due process rights. And what that means is that parents have a right to be a parent, and they get to go into court and be able to cross-examine witnesses, present evidence. They get to brief their cases and have meaningful trials. That's a basic right that people should have. Now, you might not have a good result, but at least our system of justice allows that. And I think that a lot of people think that it's just, you walk in there and the judge makes a decision and it's always right. Well, guess what? A lot of times you have to educate the judge as to what the facts are in a particular case. So that's one of the rights that you have. The other right that you have is the right to a fair division of property, right? And the right to engage in discovery of somebody else's business, or things that they don't know about. There's a lot of marriages and how I'm sure you probably see a lot of these relationships where it's secretive. You got somebody that is in control of all the finances, and there's maybe a little bit of a payment every month throughout the marriage, and suddenly a divorce happens and the out spouse, is what we call it, doesn't know what's going on financially. Well, your right is to be able to delve into that.
Right.
If there's a community business, even if one spouse hasn't participated in that business, they have a right to know what's going on. So the good thing about it is that with a proactive stance, not an irrational or overly aggressive, but somebody that insists on seeing what's going on the other side, you're more likely to get a fair result. So the rights are important.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
Very important. And your rights are important, especially with finances, but also with children. And we've seen how either people are hiding money or they're trying to withhold the children, and withholding either is just a disaster.
Right.
And people have to recognize right away that even though you're angry or you think this parent is inadequate or you want to punish them, you can't use the children as a pawn. And you have to educate them about the trauma that occurs and how, if they end up in court, how bad that's going to look.
Yeah, Steve, one other thing is that the right to be safe.
Yes,
Right? I mean,
that's
fortunately in California, we've come a long way with regard to protecting people who are in abusive relationships. You have a right on a drop of a dime to go into court and seek a restraining order.
Yes, right.
Lori, and you'd be amazed at how quickly a court will respond to somebody that's properly going into court. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are engaged in using that to get a leg up on some issues, but the beauty is that it really does protect people, because it will force somebody to move out of a home. It will force somebody to stop communicating at all unless it has to deal with the peaceful transfer of the children. And it gets people along their way, and stuff. So you have a right to peace and quiet. You have a right not to have to live with somebody else. People sometimes say, "Can I move out of the home?" I'm like, "This is the United States of America. You can move out anytime that you want, and stuff." And guess what? He or she doesn't get to come with you. So there's some of your basic rights.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. The right to safety, that's so powerful, and that is very true. Yeah. And the safety of the children also. Yeah.
I think it's also important to get a forensic accountant sometimes. You really need somebody who looks through everything and can really parse it out and tell you what's going on there.
Yeah,
So I think that's another
You are
thing.
so right. And the unfortunate thing is a lot of people are a penny wise and a pound foolish.
Yes, they resist
Okay?
it.
It's like the only way that you're going to get your portion of the value of a business is if you hire a forensic accountant. And in a lot of cases, you can afford it. You're not going to like spending the money on it. But if there's enough dollars on the table, you got to do it.
Yeah.
But so many people don't want to do that, Holly. It's amazing. Or how about a vocational examiner? Because the other side's saying that they can't work. You want an expert. Experts cost money. But if it's worth it to you, a lot of times children are worth every penny that you pay. You got to do stuff like that.
Right, that's right. Yeah, exactly. A vocational counselor to be able to say, this individual can go back to school. They've actually had an education they haven't been using, and we're going to try to project what their income might be in a couple of years. And even though that current evaluation might be expensive, in the long run, it'll save you a lot of money in alimony.
Yeah, yeah. And Lori, I think that people need to start the process as early as possible. Not wait until you're on the eve of trial to hire a forensic accountant. You can exercise your rights right away, because your ability of developing your case and getting to settlement, hopefully you're going to settle it, but if you don't settle it, then go to trial. Start early. A case is more likely to settle, by the way, if you work it up the right way.
If you start early and then you get into the discovery phase, and then you can really lay out a game plan and an action plan to move forward and, amicable
Well,
go.
like Steve says, it's not always amicable, but at least get to the finish line with a fair result,
finish line,
right?
yes.
I would say even earlier. I mean, you should know logins and passwords, and you should have a good financial picture. And a lot of people just, oh, the other person's taking care of it. So,
Speaking of that, you have a right to privacy. Okay, so that means that once you're no longer a couple, the other side doesn't get to read your emails or come into your home or start reading your mail or anything like that. You have a right to privacy, and if you're violated, that's grounds for a restraining order.
Oh,
You'd be amazed at what people do.
wow.
Wow,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, tracking. You can't put tracking devices on. So a lot of my
Yeah.
clients come to me, and it's like, hey, that he or she won't let go. And in fact, what they're doing is they're recording where I go, or they're following where I go and stuff. And those are rights that you have in court to protect yourself.
I see. So let's talk about some of the biggest legal pitfalls that people face during a divorce. So I know everybody has, some story to share. So Holly, let's start with you.
I think that one of the biggest legal pitfalls is the emotional resistance to get a team together.
Okay.
To know your finances, hire an attorney. And I say, even if you're considering divorce, you should talk to an attorney. Because that also can direct you, do you really want to get a divorce? It's a big deal to get a divorce. So maybe you do or do not. But I think the big thing is emotionally get a handle on it, get your team together. Maybe you need a forensic accountant. Maybe you need a custody evaluator, and just sort of wrap your mind around it and then hire someone like these guys.
The hired guns. So piggybacking off of what she said is that legally speaking, you could really hurt yourself if you bury your head in the sand. There's some people that are in such denial, and that happens whether you're the one that's sometimes filing or the one that's responding. You don't want any part of the divorce, and you stop responding to your attorney. You're not answering the phone when the other side calls. I mean, you can get into a lot of trouble if you just ignore the problem. And so our challenge sometimes is getting our clients to keep communicating with us and responding. Burying your head in the sand could cause the other side to get the advantage. Okay, they could work up the case and they could run into court and make quick allegations, and if you're not prepared, the wrong result could happen. Conversely, you could over litigate your case. Okay, and how often do we see that? Where you're looking for the holy grail. I always say, you don't want to be, a penny proud, and a pound foolish. You don't want to be that, right? But you also don't want to be chasing after something that doesn't exist. And there's a lot of people that think that they have rights that they don't have, and they're going to spend a lot of money and torment the system, and everybody that's involved, because they just won't give up. So, it's that thing that Steve is good at, is making people see reality and make concessions and understand that it's not perfect, but exercise good decisions. And I don't know if you do this or not, Steve, but I ask people to make good business decisions.
Yeah.
If you can, try to keep the emotion out and make good decisions for yourself.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's right. Yeah, it is. It's reminding them of reality. And by not communicating, things are going to start to, unravel. And one of the aspects when I see that happen, when people aren't responding to me and we're in mediation, is that they're not talking about what's happening with the kids. So suddenly the one parent is putting down the other parent, saying bad things about them, and those kids then begin to feel afraid of the parent who's so angry, but they don't want to disappoint that parent and spend time with the other parent. So when we're not communicating, suddenly they come in a month later and they haven't been responding, and the dad says, well, I haven't seen my kids for a month. I'm like, how did that happen? And so we've got to go back and look at what's happening in that relationship, how inappropriate things are happening, that they don't have appropriate boundaries, and they didn't allow me to help them create a parenting plan.
Yeah, and that's the biggest heartbreak that you have working in this field, that all three of us do, is seeing people being separated from their kids. And sometimes, it's the parent's own fault, and they've done some things that have caused a lot of hurt. But on the other hand, there's some times where it's just a divorce process and, not getting along with the other parent, and it causes that. We do our best to see if we can patch it up, but it doesn't always work.
Right. And I've even had many cases where one of the parents ends up feeling intimidated And so they back up and they hear these horrible things. Well, I'm going to sue you and I'm going to do this. I'm going to take the kids away from you. So then they're not responding and they don't actually understand what their legal
That's
rights are.
burying your head in the sand.
Right, that's
Yes.
it. Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that just really hit me hard because it makes me think of parent alienation, right, with the child. And so you have to be really cautious what you say in front of your child because that could also have effects on the child emotionally going through the divorce. And do you see that with mediation?
Yeah, I do. I see it a lot where there is parental alienation occurring. They're saying things that are inappropriate, and it can be so subtle. Well, you know your mom, or well, that's just like your dad. And they'll have these comments that don't seem, to be so obvious, but they're really insulting that other parent and creating this division. And I address that. I have to educate them about that. But I also explain the trauma that occurs. And I'll say to people, I'll have clients in the past who will come back at 30 and 40 years old and they'll enter counseling because of this kind of communication. You have to understand there's a future where you have a life, but these kids are being impacted by what you're saying. And it's devastating to kids when they feel like they have to pick a side.
Yeah, Lori, one of the things that the question is what are the pitfalls that you could have? Well, do you
Yeah.
love your children? Do you want your children to thrive?
Yes.
You know,
right.
and there's been significant studies that have shown that children that are the product of a divorce over time, over a period of like 25, 30 years, studies have shown that they don't thrive as well as
As a-
children that are in healthy, families.
Right.
And what's your role in that? You know, as a parent that is split with the other parent, what's your role? Well, hopefully you're going to do things for the child, not for yourself. You're going to be child-centered. You're going to make sure that the child has communications, and you're not going to be speaking badly about the other parent. And you know, if it comes down to your communications with the other side, you're going to tone check that. You know, because there's still going to be obviously some feelings in a lot of
Right.
cases, but you got to tone check that and always think about the child first. That's an unfortunate thing that a lot of our situations don't have, right? You know, a lot of the cases that we have, they're not thinking about the children, they're thinking about themselves, their rights.
Right.
Both parents have to do that.
Yeah. They're thinking sadly about revenge, and they're wanting to pit these children against the other parent just to get back at them.
Either that, Holly, or they're thinking about, I can't live without my kid. You know, it's like I can't go a week without them. They've always got to be with
Right,
me, and
right.
my child needs me 100% of the time, and they don't recognize the value of the other parent.
Sure. And
That's
also,
right.
we have to train extended family and friends not to be talking about it in front of the children. So
Yeah.
sometimes, you know, grandma is mad at whomever because of what they did. Or a friend comes over and they want to talk badly about the other parent. So we have to train other people too. So we have to talk to our
Right.
clients about make sure it's a safe environment for your child. Because your child does have the right to have a relationship with both parents, should they want that, and most kids do.
Right, right. That is interesting. So often, someone will come in and say, you know, they came back from grandma and grandma said this and this and this, and you have to talk to the parent and say, you have to teach your brothers and
Yes.
sisters and your parents to not talk negatively about your husband just because you're angry. It's destroying their relationship, it's confusing them, and now these kids don't want to visit grandma.
Yeah.
So that kind of communication has to be toned down.
Or it works and they do get mad at the other parent.
Right.
So-
And then that parent feels ostracized.
Yeah.
And that kind of relates to people coming in and automatically thinking it's 50-50. That's one of the first things. Well, it's 50-50 and I demand it. Well, it's actually an option, but the law talks about the fact that it's in the best interest of the child. And so if you're a doctor and you're working every night till 9 p.m., it's probably not going to be 50-50. And I have to dispel that myth right away, that we want to look at what's appropriate for the kids, what's a good parenting plan, what fits with their schedule, and it's not automatically what each of you think is you're going to get.
Yeah, so very, very good thoughts. But before we wrap up, Donald, I'd love for you to share some final thoughts and what people should keep in mind as they navigate the legal side of a divorce to achieve what everybody wants to achieve, right? peace of mind?
Yeah, I think to start answering that question, piggybacking over what Steve just said, children are the central focus of the family court. And when we talk about child custody, parents should know that it's not about them. Okay, it's about the kids. It's in the best interest of the kids. And as Steve said, there's no right to have 50% custody. Okay, now there's public policy, all things being equal, that children should have significant time with both parents. But really what the court's going to look at is what's in the best interest of the child. And that shows the immense power of the family court. And people should know that going through the process, there's lots of landmines. And if you want to avoid most, you can't avoid them all, because I'm going to tell you there's no perfect divorce. And you're not going to get a perfect result in most cases. But if you want to make it as successful as possible, governing thyself is going to be really important. You're going to comply with the automatic temporary restraining orders. You're going to abide by your fiduciary duties. You're not going to bury your head. You are going to be active within the case, but not take unreasonable positions. You're going to know what your rights are and not roll over, as Holly said, and give away the store. But at the same time, you're going to be focused on settling the case and not bringing it to trial unnecessarily. With that right mind frame, at the end of your journey through a divorce, hopefully we're going to come across you at Starbucks, right? And we're going to say, hey, you look like a different person. In fact, you look like a brand new person because you've gone through the journey and you've grown. And that's what we hope to see.
Excellent point.
Thank you all for joining us today on Divorce Talk. We hope today's conversation has given you a better understanding of your legal rights and responsibilities during a divorce. And if there's a specific topic you would like us to cover in future episodes, visit divorce.talk.show. We're here to help. Until next time, take care, and remember, knowledge is power when it comes to navigating a divorce.